question is that the amendment be agreed to, and I call the member for Fowler.
Sorry, I won't give you this because it's an absolute mess.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Locally owned small businesses are the backbone of the community, and it is imperative that measures are taken to ensure the continuity of their success and livelihood. Throughout Fowler, you will find a multitude of small businesses ranging from family grocers, family-run restaurants, family-run banh mi bakeries and special novelty shops that are a critical source of employment, income and space for interaction. This comprises 99% of the businesses in the Fowler electorate. Therefore, I see the uplifting and empowerment of these small businesses' growth as a fundamental and necessary action to demonstrate appreciation for their contribution to the community at large. My electorate of Fowler has over 16,000 small businesses, and undoubtedly this number will continue to grow exponentially with the number of migrant and refugee families settling over here over the decade. Many of these families rely on their self-owned business for their livelihood and as a means of employment. It is my understanding that this bill hopes to provide a pillar for small businesses in Australia through various schemes that seek to ease financial pressure and provide incentives that ensure the future of small businesses in a post-COVID world. The instant asset write-off of $20,000 is presented as a philanthropic and adequate measure to advance the endurance of small businesses. Over the few years, the available instant asset write-offs for small businesses has been in flux, ranging from $1,000 to $150,000. During the pandemic, the government at the time had implemented an instant asset write-off of $150,000 for businesses turning over up to $500 million. These measures, while drastic compared to previous years, was a necessity to keep our economy moving during difficult and unprecedented times. And with these measures ending on 30th of June 2023, I'm glad that the government was proactive in ensuring this did not fall by the wayside. However, pre-COVID in the 2019 financial year, the instant asset write-off for small businesses was $30,000, but this new measure has been reduced to 2016 level. We live in a vastly different time to 2016, in a time where hard-working families and small businesses are struggling with cost of living crisis. With inflation on the rise, food, fuel and property prices are going up, so are the costs of running a small business. Equipment costs are going up and so are electricity and water bills, and that is not even including the other administrative costs of running an SME. Despite economic conditions for small businesses seeing a slight improvement, there is still an air of uncertainty, considering that small businesses were disproportionately affected by COVID. It is undeniable that the devastating impacts of this pandemic brought still lingers, and small businesses face the brunt of this. I know that the small businesses in Fowler are still recovering from the pandemic and are struggling to stay afloat. And now that we're seeing a 13th interest rate rise, I have no doubt this will cause further pains to many in our community in Western Sydney. A constituent, Vanessa Tang, who owns a homeware shop in Cabramatta, said she was concerned about the accumulation of normal tax, GST tax and income tax that small businesses are burdened with amidst rising interest rates and increasing prices conjured by the pandemic. She highlights the challenges of small business owners who are struggling with the increasing price of cost of living doing business, like petrol, saying that these increased prices have negatively affected her business turnover and adding to the risk of her losing her business. If it's apparent that small business owners like Vanessa are struggling, why does the amount of instant asset write-off being reduced? It is not drastic to say that the assumption that small businesses will bode well in the coming years following this bill is disillusioned foresight. Furthermore, this incentive is great if small businesses want to buy smaller goods like kitchen facilities or computers, but this is not sufficient for those who may need to grow or expand their business with better yet more costly equipment or machinery. I acknowledge that in their submissions to the Senate inquiry, the National Electrical and Communications Association and the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry have both called for the instant asset write-off to be increased. NECA, who represents over 6,000 members within the electrical contractor industry, has urged the government to increase the instant write-off to $50,000. As they have rightly said in their submission, any high-tech equipment is hardware within the sector and would exceed $10,000. If the instant asset write-off were increased, SMEs and contractors would be able to recover more from their investments. I urge the government to listen to those who have had a lived experience of running a business and support any measures to increase the return on investment for small businesses. Otherwise, we could see detrimental impacts on the SME economy in the long term. A similar issue was raised by the submission from the Institute of Public Accountants, where 75% of their members work and advise small businesses. The plight of the submission focuses on the temporary nature of tax deduction scheme, where the government seems unable to commit granting certainty for small businesses, preventing them from being able to plan for the long term. Additional certainty encourages sustainable business growth, creating incentive to invest in technology and productive equipment. If the intent of the policy is to foster growth in productivity of small businesses, making the write-off permanent at a higher threshold is optimal solution. The submission for the Mortgage and Finance Association of Australia reiterates the economic pressures of burning inflationary pressures and increased costs of living on small business owners. The reduction of the instant tax write-off will place heavier financial burden on small businesses. This struggle, in conjunction with the challenges of rising operation costs and market interest rates, will exhaust the funds of these businesses and could lead to layoff of workers, reduction in wage growth, and in the worst case, terminate the operation of the businesses. According to the ABS, the rate of business closures is at their worst, with more than 15% of businesses failing in the last 12 months alone. This is the highest it has been since the global financial crisis. Half of Australian businesses that started in 2019 were permanently closed by June this year, and small businesses are undoubtedly at further risk of this, with 60% of sole traders closing their doors. Therefore, Fowler's unemployment rate of 9% may see a dramatic surge in the coming years. With this increase in unemployment, more people in the electorate will have to rely on welfare payments from the government and subsequently place a heavier burden on the government's social security and welfare expenses. At the same time, according to the RBA's findings in 2021, small business faces more challenges in accessing funding through equity and obtaining funding through banks. With inflation on the rise, customers are also struggling and hesitating to spend impulsively. Business owners are also struggling, trying to cut back costs where possible. It's the government's duty to facilitate the recovery of small business in a post-COVID world. Yet, this bill fails to take into consideration the context and reality that small businesses face. A considerable number of small businesses in the Fowler electorate are entrepreneurial ventures founded by minorities, immigrants, women and people without higher education. Support from government policies, without a doubt, can empower and facilitate entrepreneurship and financial risk for these groups of people who do not have the qualifications to seek employment elsewhere. Reducing the instant tax write-off serves as a disincentive, creating great financial risk and greater uncertainty for small business owners that come from working-class background. The social costs of rising unemployment affecting these particularly vulnerable groups are far too great to ignore. If there is discontinuing efforts to effectively help small business retain operations, prolonged unemployment for these groups of people will have harsh impacts on their quality of life as well as their mental and physical health. Loss of self-identity and confidence resulting from unemployment not only compromises their relationship with families and social networks, but also exacerbates the dwindling sense of membership in the community. These psychological impacts and other factors such as insufficient education or English skills operate as barriers to re-employment. Notably, these work to further the problems of inequality within our area and between regions. As I have mentioned, many small businesses within the Fowler electorate are family-owned, which makes it incredibly vital that the source of income these families is not economically affected. The pervasive ramifications of COVID-19 on the economy dictates that with the reduction of the instant asset write-off, many working-class families will struggle to provide for their families at a sufficient level. With the median weekly income of families in Fowler naturally decreasing from $1,529 following this level of instant asset write-off, reducing it to its level of 2016-2019, the standard of living of these households will be reduced. The Australian Automotive Dealer, a representative body for car dealers in Australia, of which includes family-owned small business, similarly advocates for a higher threshold for the instant tax write-off for small businesses in 2024. In their submission, they note that the amount proposed in the amendment is insufficient to support the investment decisions of enterprise in this industry. In Fowler, many of these small businesses are family-owned by migrant families and refugees, with 77.3% of families with parent born overseas. These families, who have come from diverse backgrounds, have demonstrated entrepreneurship to create a life for themselves. In Australia, we should have adequate measure. The lax attempt to revive and provide relief small businesses makes it harder for them to survive. The implementation of this bill may see the closure of many small firms in the education, healthcare, retail and social assistance industries that do not have sufficient working capital or cash flow as they recover from the COVID-19 to maintain operations. Sorry, my throat is dry. This issue is especially critical for ancillary services provided by small businesses in Fowler's substantial migrant community, such as legal, medical or financial services that focus on providing services for residents of Fowler that struggle with English. This niche differentiation of small businesses in this area is paramount vitality for 76.7% of households in Fowler who do not speak English in their household. The foundation of our community infrastructure may collapse if we lose small businesses and their imperative function. Moreover, the ongoing operations of small businesses stimulates competition, keeping prices low and simultaneously keeping levels of innovation high. Curtailing the extent of support that small firms receive will intensify their struggles to compete with larger businesses. This will engender a less diverse market for goods and services, creating an environment where larger businesses will dominate market segment and small businesses unable to compete. In many ways, this bill fails to provide significant relief for owners of small businesses and serves as a barrier for smaller firms to effectively maintain growth, and instead serves to further exacerbate the financial concerns in this period of economic uncertainty. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.